Video games are a really special medium. By far the most interactive and unique from person to person, there are so many games that you and I will never ever know about. Speaking as someone with friends trying to develop their own games, it's a market so saturated you'd be lucky to rip away even one pair of eyeballs from the next AAA shooter, big budget action RPG, and surprise indie darling. But if there's one thing all of those games don't have, and I can guarantee this with my entire chest, it's a singular cohesive narrative that connects from the very start of its series to the newest releases. Comic books and manga have held the top spot for years when it comes to long-form storytelling, with characters and worlds that have existed for literal decades in real time and in their fictional setting. They've been around so long they have to use a sliding time scale just to justify why characters don't age as quickly as we do, if at all. In video games, there are of course similar long-term stories, games like Metal Gear and Kingdom Hearts that tell one cohesive narrative from the first game to the last. It's not uncommon in video games to see long-form storytelling. What's uncommon is seeing long-form storytelling that aims not just to change the characters, but the very world they live in. Think about it like this. In Metal Gear, while you're dealing with larger-than-life, world-ending threats, the only characters you interact with are important to the player character. In Kingdom Hearts, there's an absolute cavalcade of characters and worlds to explore, but events are often isolated to those areas and cannot cross over outside of specific characters. They're cinematic in their presentation, asking the player to focus on what they want you to focus on instead of going outside of the bounds of normality. This is where I'd like to introduce you to a little series known as Kiseki, or Trails here in the West. It's a series of RPGs that take place on the continent of Zemuria, featuring several countries and nation-states that all have their own unique histories, cultures, geography, and more. Unlike most major RPGs, which might feature countries with one or two cities at most, these nations are massive, sprawling empires that have several cities across their vast landscapes, and each town serves a purpose for their respective countries. Some countries have elected officials, and others have royal monarchies. There's a unique measurement system, magic and technological systems that can be tinkered with and combined, and entire societies that have risen and fallen before you even boot up your first game. The world of Trails is far more realized in its scope and depth than a majority of other games just at a glance, but it gets so much better when you start to peel back its layers. Let's take the first town in the very first game, Trails in the Sky. Here's an NPC named Armand. He wants to ask out a woman named Ellie. You can talk to both of them, and you'd think at one point you might need to help them out with their love lives. But surprisingly, once you finish the game's tutorial dungeon, you can see Armand makes his move. But Ellie is a bit unsure about accepting. Not because she dislikes him, but because the location and timing just isn't romantic enough. Armand can sense something is off, but can't quite put his finger on it. That evening, after you've progressed the story a bit, the two have moved to the top of Rolent's clock tower to watch the sunset, and you can see the two of them have accepted each other's love, and Ellie is swooning over Armand, and Armand excitedly gushing to the heroes about his long one-day crush progressing into a genuine relationship. It's a sweet moment, and one that you can follow through the rest of the game. The two eventually make plans to head to the nation's capital together, and you can interact with them several times throughout the game and see how their relationship is progressing. But notice at no point did I ever say these two were required to talk to, and that's because they aren't. Unlike so many other games where NPCs are often integral to the structure and progression of the story, Trails thrives on its living, breathing worlds full of people who are living their lives separate from the main protagonists. They work, play, and love regardless of what the big bad villains of the game are plotting. Our heroes don't need to talk to them to suddenly activate their sleeper phrase and make them move like a motion-sensing animatronic. Of course, the characters aren't real, they won't have millions of lines of unique things to say, but talk to people after story beats and you'll see that they have a surprising amount to say. Armand and Ellie are just from the first town in the first game, but they'll appear in the entire Sky trilogy, and you can watch the two of them separately process the world around them and each other, regardless of what you, the player, do. That's all fine and good, but recurring NPCs in games aren't that new. What's the big deal? Well, why don't we move to a new setting then? Here's the fifth game, Trails to Azure. It takes place in an entirely separate nation with new cities, towns, and people to talk to. Your player characters are police officers, and that means taking requests from the citizens for all sorts of odd jobs. And one just so happens to come in from a familiar face. It's Armand. He and Ellie have come to this place in order to try and search for his estranged father. They want to introduce him to someone very special, their new baby, Armin. It's hard to succinctly explain why this is so special if you don't see it already. So many video games will forgo small little stories like this in order to focus on more player-facing details. Things like weather effects, physics engines, and the like. Not to say those things aren't important or impressive, but Trails made its decision to be a story-focused series and has stuck with that since its inception. The world of Zemuria is a breathing one, always moving regardless of what you're doing. While of course it is a video game with distinct flags and seams you can poke around and find, it's far easier to immerse yourself in this world compared to a title like The Last of Us or God of War, which designs its environments and worlds around gameplay first. The world of Trails is primarily designed around its inhabitants, and it's meant to be a place you can become intimately familiar and nostalgic for as you journey across these locales 2, 3, 4, and even 5 times. There will be repeat environments and characters, but unlike other games where that could be seen as a con, you can watch them grow and change both graphically but also physically. Characters and locations age, evolve, and grow as the story does, and it makes sticking with the series that much more rewarding. Today marks the start of a very special time for Western Trails fans, where in the next calendar year we're getting 3 new titles. The 13th game in the series, Trails Beyond the Horizon, is getting its English localization in January on all major platforms. It reintroduces characters from across the series as early as the second game, making their grand return to the fold. There's the previously Japan-exclusive crossover game East vs. Trails in the Sky, now getting an English localization, and last but not least, a remake of the very first game in the series, Trails in the Sky, First Chapter. From humble beginnings as a 2004 Japanese PC game and 2011 English localization, 21 years later, we're now in a world where the series has seen such success it can have a simultaneous worldwide release on all major systems. This is a momentous title for the series, as it will not only allow fans of the series to replay where it all began, but give those of you interested the best starting point the series has had in the West since the original localization of FC all the way back on the PSP. It not only starts the whole series, but this remake has the advantage of 21 years of story developments to better tie together the information it presents on its world and people, helping keep things far more consistent across titles than it could have possibly planned for initially. While it might be fine and dandy for a majority of you to start with this new first chapter, I did say that there were 13 games in this lofty series, didn't I? That's because the full storyline is separated into arcs, and those arcs serve to mark different party members, nations, and their developments. If you're curious about this series and maybe don't want to wait for all of the sprite-based games to see remakes, then allow me to give a quick rundown of each arc and sell you on why they're good starting points for the series. Trails in the Sky, or the Liberal arc. A trilogy of games that features Estelle and Joshua Bright, young up-and-coming bracers from the town of Rolint in Liberal, a small nation on the southern end of Zemuria. These 2 teenagers are initially tasked with simply traveling their home country in order to better understand it and develop their relationships with the citizens they serve. Along the way, they'll meet new and old friends, enigmatic foes, and come to realize that their seemingly small and idyllic country is hiding far more than they ever realized. The Crossbell arc. This is our first new arc, and it's by far the shortest. That doesn't mean it's lesser by any means. This arc takes place in the city-state of Crossbell, a buffer state between the 2 major superpowers on the Zemurian continent, Erebonia and Calvard. While both countries were a part of the Sky Trilogy, these games show exactly how powerful and dangerous these 2 nations can be when vying for control. Taking control of the Special Support Section, a ragtag group of young adult police officers, their section is created specifically to act outside of the increasingly locked-up bureaucratic process. Through these titles, the city of Crossbell will experience rapid, tumultuous changes that demand the Special Support Section grapple with their sense of loyalty, truth, and justice. The arc only has 2 games purely dedicated to it, but its effects are seen far past those games, and its true finale is seen in the storyline of a game I'll discuss in a moment. Trails of Cold Steel, or the Erebonia arc. A 4-game-long arc that has 2 smaller duologies to help act as a stopping point in the middle. These games follow the largest cast in the series, an entire school class of teenagers. Thor's Military Academy's Class 7, who start the arc as complete strangers from a myriad of backgrounds, but eventually, through trials and conflict, come to regard each other as family. Taking place in the Empire of Erebonia, the Cold Steel arc is where all 3 arcs of Liberl, Crossbell, and Erebonia converge into one. Erebonia is far and away the most powerful nation we've visited at this point in the story, and the previous arcs all tease that things were heating up in this proud militaristic nation. Not only are there external threats to the safety of Erebonia and Zemuria, but internal ones to the people of Erebonia and Class 7. These kids are forced to grapple with their conflicting backgrounds and come to understand not only each other, but the people around them if they want to unite a force strong enough to save those that they care about. This arc is completed in the bridge title Trails into Reverie, the 10th game in the series that acts as an epilogue for Crossbell and Erebonia respectively, as well as setting up the arc Trails is currently in, the Calvard arc. Set after the chaos of the Erebonia arc, the Republic of Calvard is experiencing a massive economic boom thanks in no small part to the chaos of the previous arcs. However, that economic success also brings its share of issues such as mass immigration and increasingly radical reforms introduced by the new president of the Republic. Taking control of the most unique pair the series has seen yet, a young man named Van Arkride and teenager Agnes Claudel, the two meet for the first time with Agnes coming to Van asking for his services to locate a missing orbman. Initially hesitant, he eventually comes to accept the job, but the two quickly realize that this is going to be a significantly taller order than either of them bargained for. Their investigation will lead them across many places and faces, some friendly and many not so much. But regardless, the pair are determined to push themselves and their new allies beyond the horizon towards the truth. And those are the 4 arcs. If you want my recommendations on the best ones to start with, I'd say Crossbell is sadly the worst starting point, but only because its length gives you the least time to appreciate the world and really settle into a groove. Its second game especially is a roller coaster ride that doesn't give you room to breathe at points, so I'd recommend coming at it when you're more seasoned in the Trails experience. Next up is the Erebonia arc, which has 2 separate starting options for you, Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 3. There was a bit of a joke among fans that Cold Steel 3 was definitely a good starting point for the series thanks to some confusing marketing for the game that claimed it was a good idea. While the game is the start of a new chapter in the arc with a time skip from the first 2 games, unless the game just really speaks to you, I don't recommend that. Cold Steel 1 is a significantly better starting point, and considering 3 directly follows up on the arcs and setting of the first 2 games, if you want to start in Erebonia, please do it in numbered order. Calvard is surprisingly the second best starting point. Despite being the farthest along in the chronological timeline at this point, it features the best presentation and most modern gameplay in the series, making it excellent for people who aren't willing to put up with more ancient gameplay and graphics. Daybreak 1 serves as a solid standalone title that can sufficiently introduce you to the world of Trails, but unfortunately the second and third games in the arc, Daybreak 2 and the new Beyond the Horizon, serves to follow up on a significant amount of stories and characters from across the series, meaning if you want the full context, you'll have to go back eventually. Of course, to the surprise of no one, the Liberl arc is the best starting point. It's the literal first chapter after all, it isn't called that lightly. The original trilogy of games might show their age in some departments, but the series grew to what it was today because of them, and I would argue that for the most part they've aged remarkably well. While they lack English voice acting for the cutscenes, there are mods out there that include the remastered Japanese VO if you feel that will help your immersion. But of course, with today's release of Sky First Chapter, there's now a fully modernized interpretation of the first third of this arc. If you want to get into the series and not feel pressured to finish 13 games back to back, you can jump into the first chapter and wait for the inevitable remake of second chapter to release. I promise you, there's no way we won't be seeing one in at least a year or two. With all of that said, I hope you've enjoyed this sales pitch from a very evangelical fan of these games. There's no right or wrong way to play these games at the end of the day. If you decide to start with Trails into Reverie and that ends up hooking you, all the more power to you. And please message me, because how? In all seriousness, I just want more people to know and appreciate these games, even if you don't end up playing them. Falcom has done something that no developer across video game history has to this point, and that's have a living, breathing world not only evolve and change across the course of their series, but do it for 20 plus years with the same creative heads passionately leading the charge, ensuring a consistent and singular vision that continues to pay off for both them and fans of the series. I think Joshua put it best in Trails in the Sky. It's overwhelming to think about all the people around us, each and every one of them living his or her own life, all under the same sky. And every person you meet has a personality and a history and a story to tell. Every one of them is just like us, living day by day. Sometimes I just have to remind myself that no one acts without cause. Nothing happens without a reason, or a motive, or an excuse. It's a perfect log line for the series. It sums up exactly what makes the world and people of Zemuria so special compared to other video game worlds. It's why one day I hope I can see all of you sharing the same joy I get out of this very special series.